So I will talk about, as I was preparing for this, and I'm a frequent visitor of Steve Blank's website. This presentation can be summarized in 2 blog posts that he put together in the last 2 weeks, and they came back to back. It's the business plan on Iridium, which we'll talk about, and he actually writes a great blog post that he takes the 4 steps to the epiphany and marries it to the business model generation book. It's right here, and that's what we're going to cover. He calls these 2 the strategy stack for entrepreneurship. I thought that was really cool, right? The customer development is the standard testing business model hypothesis. Is the standard for testing the business model hypothesis. Business model design is the standard for describing a business model. So you start with your business model and you go test it. It is that simple. So back to that chart where the action, get out of the building. This represents the first 3 big circles, right? And when you put these 2 together and you go with that little bitty arrow that says get out of the building, you put this to test. Randall came and spoke, I think, correct me, Randall, 2 months ago on the 4 steps. I'm going to plug this. I have a huge man crush. Not because he's good looking. He solved something that I perceive to be a huge problem. And if any of y'all grew up on Jeffrey Moore, right? Crossing the Chasm was the Bible in the 90s in the software company, business. He did a great job talking about all this stuff, adopters of technology and, what happens. But he did very, very little saying, how do you know you're there, right? How do you get out of that, right? And this is what my man crush is about, because customer development solves that problem in a way that as I read the book, I just kept saying, oh my God, this is the answer. I've been in multiple board meetings with venture capitalists, and everything he talks about and attributes to the behaviors of startup companies is exactly true. I got a friend in Seattle, been in several VC-backed companies. He calls me about once a month and said, oh my God, page 34, I just heard it, right? This is a great book. I can't say enough, but that's my man crush. So technically, that's what it looked like, but that's what it feels like, right? I'm an entrepreneur. This is the holy shit moment. I'm in the chasm. I've got a few early adopters. Does this sound familiar? I got a couple of betas. They aren't paying anything. They call me all the damn time. They tell me the bugs that I already know about, right? And I'm watching the payroll go off the end of the chart. Everybody talks about, oh, it's great. I love your stuff. I love it. Well, why don't you pay me for it? I don't know. We were at it talking to Boeing. We were going to give them free desktop software that allowed these desktops to collaborate, data, real-time, multi-point communications. The guy looked at me and said, look, it's 250,000 users in this network. It'll cost me $1 million to administer your free software. Tell me what's the ROI on that? That's free. And all I could say was, hell, it's free, right? I said, no, thank you. Right? Customer development in a nutshell. Again, I don't want to plow any new ground. I'm going to talk about the business model here in the core. And one of the things you're going to see is that's the result of get out of the building, right? A pivot. And pivot, you could call it many things. It's a learning moment. Blank calls it a crisis. It is what makes this model work. You talk about customer discovery. That's kind of the pre-chasm. Customer validation is you're in the chasm, and you keep pivoting until you get this scalable execution. What's that mean? That means more than one customer, maybe more than 10 customers will actually pay for your product. And you can actually, at that point, hire a salesperson to sell it. What does every single venture capital-backed company do? Hires a salesperson right here and says, go make my money. Well, I don't know what the hell to sell, right? Because you hadn't figured out any of this. Product market fit, business model. etc. Sales guys, they do one thing, they take orders. And if they can't take an order, they'll make an order. And in the software business, that'll kill your engineers. All right, so this goes back to one of Blank's posts. I don't know if y'all read it. But his case for killing the business plan is a doozy. How many people have heard of iridium? Some of you guys with gray hair. All right. All right. 1987 Motorola startup. They spent $5.2 billion, which was real money back then. Right? 66 satellites. The whole deal was this was going to be the new wireless network. Ubiquitous, worldwide, call from anywhere, right? They had an estimate of 42 million users worldwide. 42 million. They banked $5.2 billion. They launched 66 satellites. In 1987, when they conceived of it, that's what the cell phone was like. A freaking brick, right? In 1999, when they launched the company, they basically have a smaller brick. And I don't know if you know what happens between these two, but cell phones start to explode, right? So suddenly, this guy, who, by the way, you had to be standing outside, you couldn't use it in a building, became an elephant. They were bankrupt 9 months after they launched. They had 30,000 users. It was extremely costly, and the service was limited. They sold 66 satellites for $25 million. Still running today. It's a very niche product, guys in ships, people who dig gold mines in South America, military use. They basically bought it for 0.5%. 0.5%. So Blank goes on to say there's 3 big lessons that was learned because of this failure. And he attributes them all to the business plan. First, the company thought it knew the customer problem solved. They said, we got it. Locked it in. Said the problem is, the user wants and needs global, anywhere, anytime communications. That forced them into the known product solution. And that was all they focused on. Once they knew the problem, they had the solution. They didn't ask, they didn't go back, they didn't validate. It took them 8 years. Does anybody know what a waterfall development process is? It just is sequential, right? 8 years. It locked them into this timeline that went from that, right? Third, there was absolutely no notion of learning. Unable to change as the forces in the market changed. Right? Cell phones became ubiquitous. All the major markets were covered. Why would I want this ungodly dinosaur? As I can't put a text on it. What is that then, right?
$7 a minute, I think.
$7 a minute started. It's actually down to less than a dollar a minute, 10 cents a minute. It's relatively cheap now, and they still have 30,000 users, niche users. So one of the great things about Blank is what you'll see at the bottom of all his posts. He says lessons learned, and he capsulizes. And I just ripped this completely right off of him. Because I love it. Listen to what he says. Business plans are the leading cause of startup death. That's a pretty powerful statement. No business plan survives the first contact with the customer, and that was the title of this particular post. What he is saying there is, if they had gone and talked to a customer early on, that business plan would have been blown away. 8-year development cycle, 42 million people, users carrying around a brick. Rapidly changing markets require continuous iteration and customer development. And I love this last one. Your ability to raise money has no correlation with customer adoption. He would be the first one to admit, and I think others would be, that the business plan they wrote was probably written by a bunch of pinstripe suits on Wall Street, and it was unbelievable. It was beautiful. But it had nothing to do with customer acquisition. Okay, take a breather. What are we talking about? Business plans. What's a business plan? How does it differ from a business model, right? there's a plan, there's a model. I'm a little confused. And this is, again, a man crush speaker speaking. He says Blank says it's one of two things, and it's binary. It's either document your investments, make you write that they won't read, or it's a great place to begin the planning process. It collects your best guess about what you think the market is telling you. I always call it hypothesis, and he talks about hypothesis validation. And you talk mainly about these different points. So we're back to that. Business model is the place to grab and collect what you think is going to happen in the market. It defines the rationale, so the business model describes the rationale of how an organization creates, delivers, and captures value. Value means it's useful, you're solving a pain, a problem. I've seen so many business plans that are incredibly elegant, technically elegant, that don't solve any problems at all. It's this notion of painkillers versus vitamins, right? Nobody in this room needs to be in the vitamin business. You don't really know if they work. Sometimes they taste bad, and you end up never using them. Painkillers serve a real need. I have a pain, I take a pill, I feel better. Be in the painkiller business. It's a diagram that shows all the flows between your company and its customers. Again, notice it's linking company with customers. Looks back at Iridium. Iridium failed. They had this wonderful technical vision, but no linkage. It's the summation of core businesses and trade-offs by a company to earn a profit. And I put that one in there for a reason, because if you don't earn a profit over time, you will be out of business. You don't have a business. Back to frameworks. This is another framework. It's a business model framework, and it has most of the same parts that you're going to hear me talk about. My point is, find one you like. Use it. Be consistent. This one came from UK. This is what some of their upper level entrepreneurship students are using. This is name that business model, right? So this is the interactive portion of the lecture. Gillette, and oddly enough misspelled, I'm sure it's because of all sorts of trademark infringement issues that I've probably violated by copying and pasting that. What's the business model behind Gillette? Everybody's heard it. What's that?
Razors and blades.
Razors and blades. Very good. Google.
Search and ads.
Free.
Research.
A little more challenging. Kroger. One of the things you hear about grocery stores in general. Kroger's just an example.
Transportation.
Not bad. I didn't think of that. Logistics. I'm thinking loss leader, right? Sell the milk put the milk in the back left-hand corner because traffic always flows clockwise. Put it in the back. Sell it for a loss. Get people in. Sell them everything else. Lowe's, by the way, does that. Home Depot does that. Disney. What's the business model of Disney? Movies.
Selling happiness.
Happiness. Entertainment. Experience, right? McDonald's business model?
Real estate.
Selling happiness. Real estate, yeah. That's good. Then my favorite, right? What always sells.
It's not the wings.
Zipcar. Last one. What's Zipcar? Anybody heard of Zipcar? Convenience. All right. Dancing all around this. How does it relate to a business plan? Just as a refresher, this is about your guesses. So what's the context? The business model doesn't live in sort of isolation. Again, back to Iridium, there's these outside forces that come to bear on your notion of the business model. And you know, you can look at a series of these different types of models. This is a 5 forces model. I know, yeah. I'll throw some competitive strategy at you in a minute. It is the balancing act between strategy, technology, and organization.